Welcome to the Appleton Museum of Art in Ocala, Florida. I'm Marie Fielding. We are going to do a very fun, simple, kind of crazy little painting. This is really easy to do, something that you could draw on your own. It's kind of like if you start with a perspective point, and I'm going to just go through that real quick. It's primary colors, black, white. And every time I've done this, I've changed some of the houses. So you don't have to worry about straight lines. You don't have to worry about perspective. In fact, you don't want to think about perspective. You want this to be a fun painting. If you've ever had trouble transferring a picture to a canvas, a lot of times I use graphite paper, and I'm just going to quickly show you in case some of you don't know about graphite paper. If you're old like me, it used to be carbon paper. Basically, it's just the graphite on the back. You would put this on here and you trace over everything. And you're going to get a very light line, which I have on here. That's how you transfer this. But you certainly can draw some of your own houses if you want to and change this up. Like I said, I change this every time I do this. And what I have for paint is acrylic paint. And again, I pulled things so you can see that this isn't something that you have to have the most perfect paints. I mean, I have really good Liquitex paint, but I also have other white paint. This is paint that I've used with a children's class, and it comes from the dollar store. So don't think that you have to have really expensive paint to do some really fun paintings. I leave the background white because I don't want the background to interfere with the colors of the houses. Like the perspective on here, I'm talking about, right, I see all of these houses are on the same street. I see this is like a 3/4 view. This is a side view. This is turned this way. This house is going, the rooftop is going this way. I guess I'm saying it doesn't have to make sense. What you're looking for is just a fun arrangement. I have 6 houses, but I could have put more houses in here and eliminated some of this wall back here. And I didn't continue the wall over here because I still could put something back there if I wanted to. I certainly could add a little part of a little house back there. And as you're doing your painting today, you can add to this. I gave you an outline, but you certainly could go back and fill in and just have fun with it. My outline, so you can see my paint, what I have done for my painting. And here's that road. I have a little bit of a sidewalk here. This is a 9x12. I went with this size just because we only have a couple of hours. I just thought it would be easier to do this smaller canvas. I'm doing this mostly so you can see my houses. These random little lines, am I all that concerned that things don't match up? No, I am not, because this is my crazy little house. And I'll put this line here. These do not have to make sense. All my doors and my windows are going to be arch shape because they're easy to paint. They're fun to look at, and they can end up looking like eyes, mouths. Now, this is where I have this space on either side. I could continue this wall across here, but I absolutely could put another house in here if I wanted to. That's your option. I'm going to leave that, and you can decide what you want to do with that. I'm just using primary colors just to keep this very, very simple. Your color palette, totally up to you, what you want to use in here. You can mix a color, obviously, but I'm going to stick to mostly primary colors, and we use a little bit of white, but not much. And then of course some black. So really now what you're trying to decide here is, okay, I've got 3 colors and I have the fronts of houses, I have the sides. I'm trying to figure out where I want my colors. A lot of times I will repeat things. If you really look at paintings and drawings, any type of artwork, colors are repeated very often in a triangle shape because it forces your eyes to travel around the canvas and take everything in. And it's a technique that almost every artist uses. So when you're planning your spaces here, your colors for your houses, think about how you want to repeat and maybe use that triangle. I am going to add windows in here. You can always go back because the windows and doors are black. Right now, I'm not so concerned with these. I'm going to add a big archway here, and I'm just going to add 1. And all of the others, I think I'm just going to wait until I finish painting the houses, and then we can go back and put the windows in. So you can start. I use a flat brush. I love a flat brush. And if you hold the brush almost straight up and down, if you want to get that thin edge, you can. But I'm just going to take this and I'm going to drag this and start painting in. You didn't do the sketch. If you haven't done it, you haven't put that drawing on there. What I'm going to have you do first is put these two front houses in. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just draw a curved line. I can match that, or I can change the other side, but let's just match that. Then I'm going to put a roof. So don't worry about this line. I mean, this is going to be painted black. So I have the front of the house and a side of the house. I want you to do something on the other side as well. So, and run it right off the paper. This will be another house. These are the foreground that's really going to be right in your face. I'll put another, like I said, this does not have to make sense. This is where I want you to, now I would want you to go into the back here and make a point. That is going to be where your road comes from. So you're going to draw this down and just end it right on the house. Just draw it right down, end it wherever you want to. If you want a sidewalk, you can put a sidewalk in. If you don't, I'm going to put a sidewalk in here, and I'm just going to put a little one also in here. All right, back here, I want you to just draw a little line in here, and I want you to draw an arch, because this is actually going to go through that archway. Actually, I may end up painting over this because I really didn't want this to come all the way over here. This, now you have this road that you're going to put houses on. And see what I did here is I'm actually going to put a house here, kind of got bumped. So there's a roof. I just drew the front of a house. I'm going to draw the side in here, but I'm also going to I can put a little house in here too. I'll put a little one in here. And right now I'm not really concerned with all these black lines because my rooftops are going to be painted black. So if you have extra black lines in here, not a big deal. There's a house, and the side of the house is going to be back here. We do like Sharpie. If some of you are having difficulty drawing like little tiny things, then you could draw these things in with a Sharpie. If you're having trouble painting, for example, the little tiny windows, you may want to do that with a Sharpie. If it's easier for you to handle, then that's fine. Do it with a Sharpie. In this case, I drew this because it's easier for you to see it than for me to do pencil. And see, right now, I even have my windows done in pencil. I could actually go and do this if I wanted to. So I know where my windows are going to be, but we can also just do the painting and come back and add the windows with paint. That's kind of I guess, a preference. I'm going to wet this down just a little bit because this paint is kind of thick. So I want to paint this in. I'm going to paint, like I said, I like to use a flat brush. And this particular paint is thin. You hold it straight up and down, you can follow along a nice edge and outline that. I like the house in the front to be red. I'm a fan of red. This is kind of a deep red. If you have a red that you think is too bright, add a tiny bit of black to it. I'm using a flat brush. It's a medium-sized flat brush because I like to be able to drag that or hold it up and down and make that edge, because you can follow along an edge very nicely with a flat brush. So this is my foreground. And I'm not going to paint the side red. That's going to be a different color. But I do want to figure out, if I've got red here, I want red someplace in the background. The front of this one is red. So I'm going to make the side of this one red. So I'm just going to go along this and I'm going to make this. So I'm going to outline that and just paint this in. You know what? I think I am going to mix a green. I'm thinking I do want another red in here. I'm just not sure. So I'm repeating this deep red in a couple of places. So I'm going to use a yellow here and probably a yellow further back as well. And this paint is a little bit thinner. This is my Dollar Tree paint that, you know what, it works. Look, it works just fine. And that's why I had mentioned earlier, you don't have to have the most expensive paint to do, just a fun little painting. We use this Dollar Tree paint or any kind of craft store paint, with the children, with our classes here, because we go through a lot of it. I do want to repeat this. I think I'm going to do the side of this house. The nice thing too about acrylics is this stuff dries pretty quickly because we are going to go back and paint our windows and doors on this. All right, so I have a yellow. I could do is like a zigzag here, which now that I say that, I think I'm going to do that. I'm sure every country has their own version. There are so many awesome little things that you can find at the dollar stores here. So I've got a yellow, and yellow. Because I have yellow right here, even though the front of this house down here is yellow, I'm not going to paint that yellow. And that's, again, that's the fun thing about this painting. This does not have to make sense. So I'm going to paint that side yellow. And now I'm going to move on and use some blue. It's a fun drawing. It's a fun painting. And, you know, if your lines are really wiggly and off, okay, fine. That makes your house even more interesting because and this isn't a regular blue, you know, but it's a nice bright color. Let's do this in blue. And I'm purposely not painting the sides of my canvas because I like to use at the very end a dry brush with some black to give it kind of a worn out rustic look. And I'll show you that later. So I'm going to paint that in blue. Got it, blue, and I think I'll do this one blue. So this, and then I'm going to mix up a green. So I'm going to put green on the front of this house, and I'm going to put green on the front of this house. And again, if you wanted to add another house back here, you certainly could do that. All right, you know what? Let's add a house. I have the rooftop going this way in this house. I have it cross here and I have it going this way. Let's just do this. So I do have another house to paint now. So I am going to add blue back here. So I still have, let's see, I think this is going to be green. I'm going to have green here and I'll have green there. So when I make especially a green, anything, any kind of dark color, I always start with my light first, and I'm going to take a touch of blue. When I teach any of my classes, I tell my students, always start with your light and then add a touch to make that change. Let's see. Oh, I kind of like that green. Now I think I'm going to make this a little bit darker, and I'll put this one. I'm going to paint right over those because I'm going to go back and do those doors in black. So I'm just going to paint right over those right now. This green is kind of streaky because I think my blue is very thin. So it is important to drag your brush and have it all go in the same direction. And even then, this is going to dry a little streaky. And I think that's because of the blue paint. Honestly, don't like that green. I may let that dry and go over that with some blue because I don't like three different colors on this house. So I'll go back later and change that. What you need to do now is think about where you want to put doors and windows. While the paint is drying, we're going to paint all of the rooftops black, giving this paint a chance to dry. But while you're doing this, you do want to think about how many doors, how many windows, and I'll show you a little bit, and then you can start putting that placement in. If you want to do this wall back here a color, that's certainly up to you. I'm going to leave it, and I'm going to use a little bit of a dry brush later on that. So right now, you just want to paint in all of your rooftops. Just drag your brush and paint all those rooftops in black, the other side of that roof. So you're going to get some very thick lines. Well, depending on the brush that you use, I've got kind of a thicker brush. So my thin black lines are now going to become a lot thicker. While this black is drying, but it hasn't dried yet, if you want to get like a little bit of a shadow on the house, take a dry brush, or if you don't have another brush, just really wipe off. And I'm just going to put this on the edge of that roof, and I'm just going to pull some of that down. And it looks a little bit like a shadow. I'm going to wipe that off. I can pull a little bit, see, from that rooftop and make it look like a shadow. If you don't like that feathered look, then just leave it like a nice straight edge, but you can just pull a little bit of that and it will look like a shadow. It's easier to see on this one here. Go on in and just keep wiping your brush. So I'm going to paint the rest of these in. Actually, this brush is kind of big. So I'm going to go along my lines. This brush too. And if you have rooftops, my rooftops are getting thicker, fatter, but I knew that was going to happen because a Sharpie is much thinner than a paintbrush. And if you're if the flat brush is not working for you, then, use a round brush if you want to get a much finer line, which I probably will use a round brush for my archways. I'm just going to paint this in, and I'm going to go back later and outline the houses. Right now, I just want to get those black rooftops in, and I can leave that like that. I don't have to go back and make that a perfectly black line. I can leave that like that if I want to. Basically, all of this is dry, and I want to go over that green because I really don't like that green. And I'm going to make this a blue. I'm going to make it a greenish blue, but I still think it's better than the green that was there. One thing I'm going to do too, I'm going to take a much smaller brush now, a round brush. And if you have a real small brush, I want to paint in this arch. So you have that outline of the arch, but because it's giving you the illusion that it's going through a tunnel. Well, here's about halfway up, a little bit to the right. I want to make another arch, and you want to paint that in because you want to give the illusion that this road is going through an archway. And I am going to paint my road. And I use my little finger a lot of times to support, and I use the brush straight up and down and just kind of drag that straight up and down, drag that. While this is wet, take a brush, a dry brush, or if you don't have a dry brush, take one of your brushes, wash it, and really wipe it. Because I want to grab some of that wet paint. And I'm going to turn my painting sideways. I want to take this and I just want to pull some of that black across. And I'm going to pull some of it this way. Now, I don't have any paint down here, so I'm going to go along the outside edge of this house, pull some of that into my street. Don't worry about this. We're going to clean this up. And I can do the same thing. I can actually get some paint on my brush, wipe it off a little bit, and just drag it on the street. And if you want to, you can do the same thing for the sidewalk. So if you want to get rid of that really stark white, you can do that. Take some paint on your brush, but mostly wipe it off and just drag it. I would do the same thing for my wall back here, just to give it. I probably will extend the wall back here as well. I can see where I've got some little spaces, and I'm going to touch up that black. And I can see the canvas through some of it, and I do want to touch that up. Doors and windows. You want to do everything as an arch, like I did with this one. You just want to paint them in entirely in black. This is going to start to look like a mouth later on when we add a little more detail to it. And I would paint this one in. I'm going to use a smaller brush. You have to decide, okay, do I want any doors, windows on this? Actually, I don't want any on this side. I'm going to put a balcony up here. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to put that balcony. I'm actually going to draw a trapezoid. Okay, so I'm going to do a straight line back here, a shorter one, slant it out. And this is, again, your perspective doesn't have to make any sense. This little red spot in here, I'm going to paint, later on, I'm going to paint gray so you can see it better because I am going to put a door up here. All right, do you notice that the angle of the roof and the front of the house don't match? You're right, they don't have to. So again, I'm just going to put archways all down my street. This I am going to paint. This right here, this space, I am actually going to paint in gray later, but I am going to put a door here because I'm going to put a balcony over here. This house is further away, so I'm just going to put some tiny windows back here. Put one back here. The black is just to draw your attention to what is going to look like empty or darkened out houses right now. I might put another balcony up here. So I'm going to put I'm going to do that trapezoid thing again. Short line in the back, longer line in the front, and slant it out. That's going to have to dry. And a little doorway there. I'm going to put a window up here, and we'll put some windows here. Let's see, maybe just one door here, a couple of little windows. And this is where, if you're not comfortable doing this with a paintbrush, you certainly could go with it and go back and do this with a Sharpie. Absolutely. This is where I am going to go back and outline. I'm going to go back over the edges of all my houses with a black line. You can use a small round brush, or you can use a small flat brush to just go over and outline all of these, your buildings. I want these windows to dry because I am going to go back over these windows to give the illusion of depth and just a sense of, 3D, even though they're not real whatsoever. Just drag that and oh yeah, I forgot my doorway here. Let's drag your brush. The lines here. Now I know some of you have already added chimneys. I'm going to add some chimneys as well. And because these are kind of crazy little houses, your chimneys don't have to make any sense. So I'm just making curvy little chimneys going different ways. Let's put one sticking out here. So make a little oval and just make a curvy line for my chimney. Fix this one. I'll make one sticking out here too. Now, if you wanted to, you could make some antennas sticking up from these houses as well. And if I was going to do that, I probably, because my round brush is not giving me as thin a line as I would like, I probably would do that with a Sharpie. Some of my black rooftops are not as black as I would like them because I can still see canvas. So I'm going to go back over a couple of these. Eventually, we're going to add some personality to these houses. I'm just going to use the black paint actually that's on my brush here. And I want to mix up a gray. I don't want a whole lot on this brush, but I'm going to hold my brush straight up and down. I want to paint in, this is my little balcony, and I'm going to paint in this little balcony. I'm going to paint this in too. Now let's use this little round brush. If you don't have a really tiny round brush, you can use your flat brushes and hold them straight up and down. What I want to do is I want to make lines because I want this to look like, and again, they don't have to be perfect. I just want to give the illusion of a little railing around here. I'm just going to do little curves to connect. I think I'll go back over that black line just to clean that up. So I have just little curves. Now I have a railing around that. This one here, it's the same thing. I'm going to put some straight lines, just a few little straight lines, straight up and down, and just little curves. There's my balcony. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, just little tiny curves to give the illusion of a balcony. Balcony looks a little bit like it's falling off the building, but that's okay. So there's another little balcony. There's a balcony. You could always go back and add any, more to these. I could probably put one in here because I have plenty of space to do that. I've used the gray to make the flat area of the balconies. I'm going to use that gray eventually in the rooftops just to give them a little more texture. Okay. All right, so if you have a window, let's say, or a doorway, I'm sorry, what you're going to do is you're drawing a trapezoid. So there's a shorter line. This is going to angle out, and actually I would give this a little bit of thickness for your balcony. That's what you're doing. So this is your doorway that you have painted, slant it out, and make this line in the foreground longer than the one in the background, because see, then you'll add the little railings. So trapezoid, there's your balcony right there. You know what? Let's just add one right here. I'm going to draw it on here first. I can put another, this is going to be a fake balcony because I don't really want a doorway here. So I'm going to put a short line. It's going to come out. It's going to come out. There's my trapezoid. And this, I'm going to make a little thicker for the thickness of the balcony. I need to paint in the balcony. Let's take that gray paint. I'm going to paint this across here. There. So there would be the front edge of my balcony. I'm going to outline that. I'm going to wait for that gray to dry, I think, before. Let's add some railings and little curvy things. It doesn't really make sense on here because I don't have a doorway. And if you really don't like what you just did, which I don't, I am not afraid to go back and wipe some of this off. I'm going to let that dry and I'm going to put something else there. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. Still seeing some white through my canvas. Okay, to give the illusion that you've got depth to your doorways and to your windows and the possibility that there might be some light in there, we're actually going to use yellow. And you want to find a very small brush because what you're going to do is make a curve in here from about the top of that archway. Okay, so about the top of that archway, you're going to make a curve with yellow. It just gives you that illusion that it's open. It also starts to look like a face. We can go back later and add little details, but what I want to do is I want on the left side of doors and windows on this right side of my street and on the right side of everything on the left side of your street. So, and once you do this one basic passing of yellow, sometimes it's hard to go back and do another one and I'll show you what I mean, because I don't want this to be really bright. I'm going to start at the top here and I'm just going to go down along the side. That's it. I'm going to use that corner of my brush and just do a stripe down. And you know what? This brush is really too big. So I'm going to take my doors and windows further back here. I'm going to use a small round brush. I just want a little bit of paint. I'm just going to do a little stripe down on the right side, just a tiny bit. Now I want to do the left side over here. That's still wet, so I'm going to wait. I'm just going to add a little yellow here on the left side of all of these windows. Just a little curve. Doesn't have to be in the perfect spot. I wouldn't try and go back and do it over again. Do you see the illusion of those doors and windows being open in 3D? You should get that little bit of illusion. It's just a little bit of light going in and it gives you the illusion. This is still a little wet. I'm just going to drag this down and I have just that illusion there. Now let's see what I can do to this. Okay, to fix that one, I think I'm going to use the gray. So I can fix this by, I'm going to make this like a big sign. This will have to be painted a couple of times. I'm not sure what I'm going to put on here. So I've got the lighting in my windows. I'm going to go back to my gray because my rooftops are dry. And you know what? You just want to add some little detail and give it some texture. So it looks like it's got shingles. You may want to just draw a little highlight line along the edge. If you want to, you could probably add some little puffs of smoke. Mix up some more gray here because the black, like I had said before, the black is really the last thing that you want to put on there. Do the yellow first, but I wouldn't do the yellow really, really strong because this is a tone down because it's just inside the doorway. So you don't want it. You don't want that yellow in your doorway as bright as the yellow in your house, you know, because the yellow in your house is out in the street in the daylight. That yellow inside is just there to give you that illusion of depth. So with your gray, you know what? It's really, I can just do little curves, shingles, and each one, you don't have to do every single one. Maybe I want to add a little highlight to my rooftop just to draw attention to that. I'm not going to do it on this. I'm going to do it on the front here. Maybe I'll just do that little corner, maybe a little over here. And these shingles, you know, the designs can be different on your rooftops. You're trying to create a fun picture. And at this point now, what I'm trying to do is add pattern and texture to this picture because I want this to be fun to look at. So I'm just adding little dabs or little tiny lines. And like I said, it doesn't have to be everyone, but I do like pattern. And I'm not sure, we can just, you want to add some smoke coming out of these things, just kind of dab that gray and you have a little bit of smoke coming out of there. With the shingles, all I did, I mixed up a gray and all I did was I just did little lines. That's it. And they can go horizontal. You may want, I'm doing it in black so you can see it easier. You know, some of your rooftops, maybe you want them to be vertical lines, but they can be horizontal lines. And that's, you know, that's what I did in here. Some of them are vertical, some of them are horizontal. And now is, you want to think, do you want to go back in here and add some other decorative elements to your houses, which is what I am going to do. I'm going to get my little brush. And if you want to add dots, a lot of times I use the back of my paintbrush and I can just, I need a little more paint here, and I can just add polka dots. The back of your paintbrush is great for polka dots. And I'm just going to go around this doorway. I'm just adding pattern and design elements because these houses are not realistic. Make them fun. They start to look like eyes. I can put some more, put some here, add a few more little, it just gives your picture something else for you or any viewer to look at, just draws attention to all the little fine detail. And that's what you want to start adding to this. And I would do something, honestly, I would do something to every single house. See, I do like the little lines underneath the windows. It draws attention to those windows. I'm going to put like little eyebrows on those. I'm going to put a little big eyebrow on this guy. I don't paint the sky in. I leave the sky white because I don't want the sky to overpower the colors. My houses are the focal point of this picture. If you put something in there, you're liable to take away from all of that interest that's going on in here. You know what? A lot of times the paint markers that you buy They are acrylic paint, and I'm going to paint the front of this gray. You could use a paint marker, and those are really wonderful because it gives you a lot of control, drawing fine details. That I'm going to just make this whole thing dark gray and see what happens. Paint. I have used paint pens, and they're great, and you can get them in all different colors, and they would be really fun to add all kinds of detail in this that you couldn't draw, and you can get them in a very fine point. Wouldn't it be fun with a very fine point to then tangle your background just in black and white, very fine lines. Yeah, but if you have those paint markers, I would definitely use them. All right, the gray doesn't look that bad. Looks better than the mess that I created on there. And who knows, when that dries, I may put blue over it. What I could do is just keep going on these. I'm going to put just little spiky lines on this one there. These are definitely eyebrows. Put a couple of little lines under here. And you know what, even if you wanted to, you could do something along the edges of these houses. You know, if you wanted to just break that up. Like I said, I do love pattern. So, you know, that just gives that a whole different look. Let's just make some lines down here. I don't know, just something different. Let's do that over here, kind of like that. Maybe I do need to add something here, but I'm not really sure. Flatten my paintbrush out just to add that little texture, that little pattern here. Put one up here and something over the top there. There. Now my wall back here, this little spot really is not making a whole lot of sense. So I think I'm going to extend this over here. So it does look like, and I'm going to extend this over here. Since I'm not putting another house in there, I am going to put that wall back there, and I am going to draw, or paint rather. So this is going to have a little fencing up at the top. And I do want to fix this. So if I have a little bit of paint on my paintbrush, I am just going to drag this down and give that wall so it has some color to it. Now through my doorway, I could paint a color back here as if there's another home back there. So let's do that too. And I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to paint so there's a red building back here. If you go through that tunnel, there's going to be a red building back there. There's a lot of water on my brush on that one. Yeah, the sidewalks, you know what, if you wanted to, I just use that black dry brush on that. If you want to, you could paint that in a gray to make it look like a definite sidewalk, something different from the road. I'm just going to take a little bit. So if I wanted to make that very different, yes, let's paint it. I'm going to paint that in a gray. So now it's going to look very different. So, I mean, that's something that you can do. Yes, it could be a canal. You could, oh yeah, wouldn't that be? You could paint the wall, give it, oh yeah, that would have been cool to make it, to make that a canal. That would have been really interesting. I wouldn't put green down here because of that. I've got a greenhouse down there. One thing, antennas, there were a lot of antennas sticking up from houses, going here and there. Now that's, you know, you can do something like that if you want. I just like the chimneys. One thing that I do want to show you before we stop, I like to finish mine. It gives it like a rustic look with just a little bit of black, which then ends up coming off across the top here. It gives, maybe like an old look to your picture. And it's on the idea of that dry brush. So I take a bigger brush, and you could do this anytime. See, I'm going to put some black paint on a big flat brush, and actually I'm going to wipe most of it off. This is all you're doing is you're brushing. But what happens is some of this comes over. Let's do it on here because it's easier to see. I'm going to kind of wipe that. So I'm getting some of it on the edge of my canvas, but I'm also getting some of it on the top here. And I can do this even more. So I'm hitting the top edge here, and it's just kind of those loose bristles. So what I'm doing is I'm hitting this edge of the canvas, and I'm kind of flicking it's onto that front. So as you hit it, it drags some of those bristles onto the front of the canvas. You can always go back and do the sides. Almost gives it a little bit of a frame. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to tap it and bring it down. It just kind of holds the picture together. I don't have to worry about my sky because I've got this little bit, kind of looks old. now. And I see, I've done the same thing. I did the same thing on this one. I've got a lot more black coming down on this one. But it also, if you have no intention of framing this and you just want to leave it, this also kind of finishes that off. And you don't have to worry about painting colors on this, on the front to match the colors on this, on the side. It just kind of gives you that, and it's done. Get a little more on this side, and you try different things. And if they don't work, a lot of times you can paint over, like my building. All right, that blue is better. See, and I like to paint on a black canvas. So black gesso is even better. It'll really cover just about anything. Yeah, we've done that. And it's great because canvases, after a while, canvases can get to be very expensive. And like I said, I like to paint on a black canvas. So, and that's even more expensive. So it's easier to just use black gesso rather than buying a black canvas. All right, that blue house looks 10 times better. And then I'll fix this later. We'll do something on the front on that. But as you can see, this is a really simple painting. You can have lots of fun with this. You could paint your road a color. If you wanted the yellow brick road, go right ahead. It really can be anything that you want it to be. And as I said, I change these houses a lot when I paint this. If you do this again, change it up, hold it horizontally. That'll make it look even more different because your houses will be shorter, but I like the tall houses. From the Appleton Museum of Art in Ocala, Florida, I'm really glad you came.